do you think that Gutey has shown urgency with what he's done this offseason? I think he has. Like, all this being in conversation talk, if he doesn't do it, you're going to say, oh, I'm sick of all this talk. He ain't doing it.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not like that. Don't say that about me. That's not true. I want him in conversations. I wanted him to at least have a conversation about Davante Adams.
I joined that
Even
club.
if you decide not to go after him.
I'll join that club, but that's obviously not where he felt like that was going to happen. And he has enough credibility with what he's done in the free agent game. He has put on a masterclass when it comes to picking up free agents. I can't think of what has he done that has stunk? That's been an up-but failure.
All right, if we're gonna judge people based on championships and everything else, he is entering his 8th year as the general manager.
He's had 3 1 seeds. Sometimes it's about the players and the coaching too, fellas. It is.
Is it ever about the GM then?
How many rosters has
we kill Aaron Rodgers for not getting back to another
Bryan
Super Bowl.
Bulaga, how many rosters have been good enough to win a championship that Brian Gutekunst has put together? He's been here 8 years.
Apparently none.
Well, I'm asking Brian.
Apparently not. I think 2019 we were good enough. Obviously, the two one seeds were good enough.
It's 3.
I wasn't there, obviously, for the 2, but they were good enough. I would say 3. You know what I mean? That's what I would say. I would say 3 for sure.
3 out of 7's not bad, boys. It's not.
I would say 3 for sure. Obviously, 2018. 2018, the roster was not ready. I think we could all admit that,
Yep.
right? That was that 2018 was bad. Jason, you and I talked about that from the jump. 2018 was bad from camp. But it was, and then obviously what happened at the tail end of Aaron being there. Guys were leaving. You mentioned Davante was out the door. Things were changing there. The roster was getting turned over big time. Gutey was starting to kind of put his spin on what he wanted to see that roster become. It was starting to kind of get ready for the Jordan Love transition. Now, right, we're looking at what's getting built now. Do I think this roster right now is a Super Bowl roster? Do I think it right now is a Super Bowl roster?
Say it!
Jump on in.
I think I think it's a deep playoff roster right now. I think it's a deep playoff roster right now. I don't know if it's a Super Bowl roster right now.
What is the biggest thing that's holding you up and saying that this is a Super Bowl roster? Is it the wide receiver spot? What is it for you?
It's not like a specific spot, right? Like, and I don't say that it's because it's like an individual or things like that. Like, you haven't seen the entire roster like play together as a team. Like, they haven't put together performances that you've seen that are like that roster together looks really good. Like, right, Jordan Love's first year caught us all off guard. We were all like, oh wow, like this thing next year, like we were all thinking next year this roster is like ridiculous.
Yep.
You know, add a couple pieces, you add Jacobs and McKinney, and you go, oh my gosh, like you add those pieces, this is like this roster is really good, right? And then we kind of saw what happened. I get Love got hurt and things, but like you know, things I don't. Guys kind of either stayed the same or maybe took a step back. So then you kind of got to reevaluate where they're at, right? So like, to me, I got to see a little bit more from the group as a total of where they're at, right? Like, let's see if that roster that we thought was so good going into last year, that kind of stayed the same, or you know, or whatever they did, whatever happened last year, if they take that step this year and improve as a whole. Because like if I just start pinpointing a position or a guy, like that's not right. Like that's because it's not just one guy or one group. Like that's not fair. Like to me that's unfair. It's a whole. It really is. It's a whole. Like because like in 2011 like or 2010 like you could have looked at that roster. When you got there were a bunch of guys that got hurt. right? There was a ton of injuries of starters, and you looked at that roster, and there were tons of issues on that roster, like tons of issues when key veterans got hurt, and you could pinpoint a bunch of issues with that roster. Like, oh my gosh, like that looks bad, that can't work, and it worked. Why? Because you look at the collective of it and the guys that helped those spots that were issues and made it work. So like, there's reasons why I think it could be good, but it needs to show why it can be good, and that's what I didn't see last year, and that's why it holds me back from saying it could be this year.